Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. A big gratitude I'm extending to everybody for sharing your time with us today. A big thank you to Charmaine Lynn for the opening. I have to confess, I was not exactly sure what to expect, but it was so inspiring. So I appreciate the opportunity. And sometimes those things happen. You never know what you're gonna get, but showing up is what will also happen or be there for you when you're ready for it. So I'm appreciative to everybody who has joined us today and who are sharing their insights and their experience and their wisdom. We do have a great lineup coming up, and this is going to be fantastic. It is a 6 to 8 minute lineup of little sharing of information, knowledge, and wisdom that's coming. And so it's great opportunity for us to hear from our colleagues. I also want to just say an acknowledgement about the faculty the faculty competency framework, and how you may earn your badges towards something like performing change making or in your mentoring or something along those lines. So keep that in mind. And I know Tracy and Ian will be very forthcoming and how you might be able to get your badges as well. They'll probably share that either at the end or in the chat. Also through this section, I wanted to make sure, thank you. I also wanted to make sure that folks recognize that we're going to try to keep things moving. 6 to 8 minutes is not a long time to talk, so we can all appreciate that. So we're going to ask for folks, if you do have questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat. And then we'll be able to curate them or bring them all together. And at the end, we will answer those questions or get to those questions sort of at the end, a Q&A. Again, thanks everybody for joining us today, and we're going to go right into it if that's cool with folks. Got the thumbs up? Yep, thank you. All right, so the first speaker that we have today are Jared Otterman and Samantha Sullivan-Sauer, and they're going to be talking about change-making pedagogy. Please take it away. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Kelly. And just making sure Jared's on the line as well.
I am here.
Wonderful. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We are happy to come and share some of our experiences with change-making pedagogy. Particularly, it's called Building Thinking Classrooms. My name is Samantha. My colleague Jared is here, and unfortunately our colleague Mary couldn't make it today, but the three of us have been working on this. We are all professors in the Engineering Environmental Technologies department. Jared teaches in the carpentry program, Mary in the civil engineering technologist, and myself, I typically teach science and math, but right now I'm in our Center for Teaching and Learning. So next slide, please. So earlier this semester, we overheard in one of our classes a student say, "It's over already? No way." And so we wanted to share with you what the students were doing that got them so excited and so engaged. And this is where our story is going to take us today. But before we get into that part of our story, next slide, please. I want you to take a few seconds and think about some of the behaviors that you would typically observe in a lecture-based class. And yes, there'll be a few students listening, maybe taking notes, but chances are there's some students on their phones, maybe having a nap, eating a meal, watching some videos, and I particularly have a memory of students doing homework for the class that came next, when in my class. Next slide, please. So really, about 20% of the students are spending about 20% of their time thinking, and this has come from research. So my question, and if Ashley, if you could click, is what are the other 80% of students doing? Okay. So we've given them a problem, we've given them an activity, 20% are working on it. What are the other 80% doing? And so if we go to the next slide, well, when given a problem-solving task, many of our students are mimicking, stalling, slacking, and faking. And actually over 50% are mimicking, meaning they're doing exactly what the example we just showed them did. And they're just trying to follow along. Next slide, please. So if we go back to our student we talked about at the beginning, who was so excited that, really shocked that it was over already and that time had gone so fast, here's the task the class was working on. They were asked which jar has the highest value. And if you had walked by the classroom at the time that this task was given, next slide, please, Ashley. This is what you would have seen. Learning in action. You would see students standing up, collaboratively working in small groups at non-permanent vertical surfaces. And the work we're sharing here today is based on the work of Peter Liljedahl called Building Thinking Classrooms. And yes, it says in mathematics, but it actually applies to any teaching. And if we go to the next slide, I'll pass it over to Jared.
Yeah, so we've been working with this technique. I've been doing it in my classes a little over a year now. I started last year. And there's some real nuance to what makes this effective. And one of those components is visibly random groups. So these random groups of 3 are optimal. And we've been experimenting with that in groups over 50 students. And we break them into a whole bunch of groups of 3. And we change those groups frequently. And I've been using a deck of cards to, again, randomly divide up students. And the research shows, and we found it as well, that these random groups reduce anxiety and stress. They encourage collaboration. Even if the students don't like the group they're with, they know because it changes frequently, they'll be with somebody else next time. And community begins to form in the classroom very quickly, but it doesn't happen right away. It's important to note that this is not a try it once and you're done strategy. Next slide, please. Another kind of nuance of this technique is the vertical non-permanent surfaces. So lots of us experience when students are sitting, they can choose to be anonymous, they can disengage, but when they're standing or involved in outside of their desk, they feel seen. It provides equity that everyone can stand at a board, and so everyone has equal access to the learning or task that's happening at that time. And then the real benefit we've noticed is we get to see what students are thinking in real time. So not only do we get to see what they're working on, but we can see where they're stuck. And we've found that's usually in a different place than we think. We assume it happens at step 8. We think, well, that must be where they're getting stuck, but lots of times it's happening at step 3 or 4, and then we can intervene right away. And we can provide immediate feedback and get students back on track. Next slide, please. So another kind of nuance of this, and what you saw in the beginning with the jars, is a good thinking task. So a good task has a low floor, that something that all students can get on board the thinking train. And a task that has a high ceiling, so lots of room, and it helps students achieve productive struggle. And then really, really key, especially I think in post-secondary, is it has to be novel. So meaning something they haven't seen before. We want them to think about the problem, not just try and mimic what we've already taught them. So again, this is solely focused around problem solving. And next slide. So we've noticed that we're seeing students more engaged. We know students are truly thinking because we can see it. We're developing lots of sustainable skills, and we're promoting equitable, inclusive, active learning in our classroom. Slide. And a quote from Peter: if students aren't thinking, they're not learning. When students are thinking, anything is possible. Thank you.
So thanks so much for having us today. And if you are interested in learning any more, please reach out to us at facultydevelopment@georgiancollege.ca. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Samantha. Thank you, Jared. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll put questions in the chat for you folks. And at the end, we'll kind of do a summary at the end. I did forget to mention, I think I did mention each session is 6 to 8 minutes. We will put the 1 minute warning in the chat, as Tracy did, just so that we can also maintain our schedule as well. All right. Thank you, folks. Next up, Quentin. Hey, Quentin. Nice to hear and see from you.
Hello. Quick mic check. Yes, we can hear me.
We can hear you. Thanks, Quentin.
Awesome.
All right. Welcome. I'm just going to introduce your topic real quick. So Quentin is going to talk about the syllabus and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals pilot. So welcome and over to you.
Thank you, Cal. Really appreciate it. I just want to make mention, first of all, I love what Samantha and Jared just did, but I don't remember giving you permission to actually talk to all my students and get that data. So I'm not sure how you actually pulled that all, but yes, see a bit of mimicking, see a bit of homework of future classes done in my room too. Love that stuff. Also, I know I only have 360 seconds or so, but I would be remiss if I didn't give a quick shout out, some gratitude to the FOCH team who put this together. Honestly, thank you. I love the chance to actually get together, share, learn some of the great people. So big thanks to you. Okay, so yes, quickly, just want to talk about a pilot project that's underway that's relating the UN SDGs and trying to integrate that into a tool for faculty, specifically the syllabus, that makes it a little more accessible. So really quick slide, I'm not going to dive into this, but for those who maybe have not heard of the UN SDGs, they do stand for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And basically, they're a shared action framework for people, planet, prosperity. It's something that Georgian College is committed to through the SDG Accord that they signed, and we actually have an SDG committee I'll talk a little bit about too. Next slide, please. If you are not familiar, you might be more familiar with the visual if you haven't actually heard the terminology. We'll see these around various campuses. And these visuals are fantastic little touch points for people to get more connected to it. So you're going to see that particular piece integrated as well. Next slide, please. So a really brief background, sort of the flow of how this came to be. One, our SDG committee that we've been working on, and a little shout out props, we're getting it back going in January. If those are interested in maybe joining the committee, we'd always love to have more voices on it. But basically, we were seeking ways to make SDG, the knowledge, the resources, integration easier for all staff, campus, but specifically faculty, while fulfilling our commitments to the Accord. And what I kind of noticed was that I was being approached by a lot of peers about, Quentin, can you help me integrate SDGs into my curriculum, this course, which was awesome. And I love to do it, but it was super non-efficient to be going faculty by faculty. So we sort of started ideating a little bit and said, what can we do here that would make it more accessible for everyone? And so we had this concept of creating an SDG integrated syllabus template. So something specific for our program to begin with that multiple faculty could engage in ways that actually fit for their courses. And we've been piloting that SDG syllabus now for this particular 2024. So in winter, summer, and now fall. Next slide, please. So our challenge really was, how might we make the UN SDGs more accessible to faculty and ideally students? And as we kind of sat with that, we realized that we actually need to back up a little bit. So next slide, please. The insight was that we realized there's no singular right way to integrate the SDGs into an institution. And the best way is actually just to see what's already doing. What the reality is, so many of you already on this call, but also across the college, we're already doing this. We're just not calling it this. So we're just not making the connection to this. So we wanted to figure out if we were going to start from that, rather than just sort of bombarding with resources and knowledge, if some people are already doing it, how do we actually help them connect the dots a little bit on it? Next slide, please. So our outcome was about creating a tool that helps them integrate the pieces that they're actually already doing. So rather than putting new work onto faculty to try and figure this out and connect and bring new information in, let's just see what you're already doing. And then from there, see if you can actually connect it. Because for so many faculty, this is already happening. So the syllabus template was co-created by the amazing Sarah Maniali and Brian Hunt, the Dean of Hospitality, Tourism, and Rec, really championed this. He gave me full green lights to go ahead and talk with people, use Sarah's time, talk to other faculty to get their input to start this pilot project. And our hope is that this pilot's going to sort of generate some insights, maybe even some gaps of areas that we didn't think about when we first put it together, that we can learn from and then move forward as we roll it out to all faculty. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like. There's two stages that were to really stand out. So this is actually integrated into the syllabus. This is page 3 of the HDR syllabus, where we actually created a full page that lists all of the SDGs. And the cool part about this is obviously it's a quick reference slide for people if they are looking at their syllabus, but also all of those icons are actually hyperlinked. So if you had a desire to learn a little bit more about that particular SDG, because that was the one that you actually connected it to, you can just click on that link, go deeper, it'll take you right to the SDG site, and you can start looking at maybe some of the targets, because maybe it's something a little bit more specific. And so this was all about helping make easier access, like descriptions. So obviously some people really familiar, maybe others have never been familiar. So at least to start, we wanted to have the page there that people could A, access to read, but then B, click on to move farther if they wanted to get a little bit more information. Next slide, please. And then this is sort of the longer term vision, what we see. So every single course, every faculty knows we have our learning outcomes that are actually tied to courses. And then at least in HTR, we wind up trying to connect them to specific assignments as well. So what's the learning outcome that's relevant for this particular assignment that's happening? And so what we've tried to do is actually just create a second column for the SDG outcomes. So what are the outcomes that might be mapping to that particular assignment? So you can see sort of what I have here is that first assignment, that's going to map to SDG 9. Their following assignment, well, it's going to be 9 and 17. You can see the 1 to 17, that's because the students are actually creating their own project related to the UN SDGs, so they could be picking any one. But this is just an easy way to show the connection for students, that this is integrated directly into just the curriculum, it's not just a learning piece. Next slide, please. So our next steps really about taking the insights from the pilot from this year and applying them in a more effective way. If I'm sorry to say this isn't available yet, but if it's successful, the template and other resources will start to get rolled out probably in the fall 25 term when we have that finalized version that faculty can absolutely use to try and map to their own courses. Next slide, please. So this is just some final little references and a huge heartfelt thank you to the FOCH team and for all of your time today. If you do have any questions at all, don't ever hesitate to reach out. I love chatting about this stuff. Thank you so much, team.
Thanks, Quentin. Awesome. I will confess that I did lose a little bit of my internet, so I am grateful that we have a recording. And this is a reminder to folks that if you are like me and you did lose a little bit of time there, you also have the opportunity to go back and watch the recording as well. So Quentin, always lovely to see you, and you're always doing such great work. For those of you who don't know, Quentin is genuine when he does say, please reach out, and he does love to chat. He would love to connect with you. So again, thanks, Quentin. All right, next up, Mary Dobson. Lovely to see you as well, Mary. Mary is going to talk about I am a change maker assignment that she's going to share with folks as well. So Mary, thank you, and take it away.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank Quentin for being my opening act, because that's my whole premise, is that we're already doing it. We just didn't necessarily identify it as that. So I'm faculty in interior decorating, and interior decorating can be seen as kind of a frivolous thing on the surface. If you imagine we're just helping people buy new stuff, but in fact, we are impacting how they feel about where they live. And that is very much a core to whether or not we're happy, whether we are just feeling like we're in the right place in our lives. But in terms of formal projects that we do, we've been doing change making in our program before it was called Changemaking. We were doing community service learning projects way back in the day. And so when we started looking at the framing of change making, for me, I kind of had some challenges making that shift. But then suddenly I had that light bulb moment where I realized we were in fact already doing it, because the change-making process is the design process. So we work with not-for-profit. We get so many people asking us to redo their kitchen or their bedroom or whatever it is. But when we can focus on a not not-for-profit like Redwood Park, Barrie Families Unite, it brings a different level to what we're doing. And because it's about the not-for-profit, I start off the project by having the students really do research and think about those SDGs and which ones we are meeting by undertaking with this project. So I'll move on to the next slide. So we go through the whole process. So that first one is research. So we examine the SDGs, we pair them with the assignment. We have people from the agency come in, or better yet, now we can do site visits again. We go to their facility. We see the challenges they have with their space. We find out what they need to have happen. Our students also do their own research on who the clients are. They do a deeper dive and they really look at the idea of who they are helping by doing this particular project. And for the ones that we've undertaken in the last few years, it's about making sure people have a sense of dignity when they are coming to these agencies to furnish their homes or get home goods or whatever they are. So the first step is research. Next slide. Our next one is ideate. So we, again, in the design process, it's brainstorming. And this is for sure a group project where people really collaborate. We're working the idea of everyone having a voice, that they take turns being the leader in the project, that no one person is going to be in charge, but they really work together to bring a whole bunch of different ideas and solutions for the client together. Next slide. The next one is testing. So in the design process, we do something called crits. So students have to have met certain thresholds of work and then they get feedback. So the idea is that they've collaborated, they've put together an idea, and then they sort of run it by me and I give them feedback. I try not to take over. I have an issue with that because I want to give them my ideas as well. But, it's a very exciting kind of process where we can say, yeah, that's going to work. What about this? What about this? What about this? So they go back to the drawing board again, not from scratch, but they take all that what about and go a little bit further with it. So that's our test stage in the process. This is the most terrifying part for our students because the agency then comes in, and last year with Barrie Families Unite, they actually had a panel of 4 people from the agency, and our students come in and use their own presentation skills to sell their idea. And they really, as decorators, need that to be a skill that they have developed where they can tell a story that paints a picture that shows how they have provided the solution and asking the client to agree that their solution is in fact the best one. And next slide is, again, these are just some examples of what students have done. So I'll get you to go next slide again. But students use their talents and their skills, their knowledge from the course and throughout the program to put together visuals to sell to the client. Next slide. And next slide again. This is the best part for me. The absolute best part is the reflection. I know in some programs, they're like, oh, we've reflected to death. Our students don't really do that. So this is the part that is always so fun for me, so rewarding for me, so emotional for me, because sometimes they go into this project going, yeah, okay, fine. But boy, oh boy, they're in love with this project by the end of it. And I just threw a few quotes in here from students, but I think the very last one here on the page, after the success I have experienced in my time at Georgian College, it feels right to end it off with a project that felt much bigger than just me or a grade. Yeah, I know, seriously, I get chills even just reading it because it was the idea that we can impact the people around us. Doing things for not-profits or for a community, yes, it's networking. Yes, it's helping them to build connections. It can even provide employment or clients down the road. But it's the idea that they realize that what may be seen as frivolous can make a huge difference in their community. And it's something that really sets them on the path to wanting to do more and more of this going forward. So that is my presentation. Thank you very much. I again, I'm so all in on change making. I feel like there's just so much more we can do, but we have integrated into our learning outcomes. That's how committed we have become with change making and interior decorating. So thank you.
Mary, thank you. I think you embody everything that is change making, and how
Thank
lucky
you.
for your students to be able to learn from you, and for you to be able to put that into the curriculum as well. They are
Thank you.
they are so lucky. Thank you very much for sharing. And then next up we have Rena Lang, and Rena is going to talk about sharing skills abroad, and in particular her experience in Guatemala. And I'm super excited to hear about all about this, as I was on the ground floor with this when it first started way back when. So take it away, Rena.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I'm Rena. I'm the coordinator for the hairstyling program at the Barrie campus. About a year or two ago, a student came to me and wanted to know if she could donate her shears to future students. And I thought it was such a beautiful idea, but not possible because I need everybody to have the same kits. So I started looking up places that maybe I could donate shears or tools to. And I came across this organization called Hair Aid, where they actually have hairstylists that travel abroad and teach people in underdeveloped countries the basic skills of cutting hair so that they can be sustainable themselves and look after their families. So that all worked into the goals that I really wanted to do. And I went to the international experience, and they worked with me on this. So I just brought some pictures that we took together with some explanations. So next slide. I just had to show this because this was the view from where I was working. I was double fortunate because Georgian set up this location for me. And this is actually the view from my washroom from the little school that we worked at. So next slide. This was the destination that Georgian set up for us. It was called Funkoli. They drove us up a mountain. We were actually 1,200 feet above sea level. And then we had to backpack all our tools in to get to the school because you can't take vehicles down there. These people have no water or anything except for at this little school that's been funded. So next slide. I took myself and 3 students. We want to embed this into the program so that it's something that we do every year. So drivers picked us up at 8 o'clock and we trained with the students until 4, except for the location that I was at because the wives had to run home and get meals ready because the men were coming in from the fields and it's a 20-minute walk. So they would have to go 20 minutes home to get the meal ready so that they could walk 20 minutes to get the meal, eat for 20 minutes, and then walk back. And then I was lucky enough to go to all the other destinations as well. Next slide. This was one of our students, Abby. She was in the town of Antigua, and it's very, very busy there. It's very European looking, but here's a picture of some of her graduates. So we had 5 days to teach these students basic haircut skills, which one of the most rewarding things was to watch a student go from student who was insecure and nervous when we got there to a confident instructor at the end. Next slide. This was Adriana. We were blessed to have her join us as a student because she also speaks Spanish. So she ordered all our food, got us all our directions, did all our bartering for us. They had 21 graduates at this location, also in Antigua, all outside too. Next slide. Kaylee and myself, we were at the location Georgian set up for us. We had 8 graduates. It was a smaller class. There was 5 different groups. Some of them had 5, some of them had 20. But these ones in particular, I felt double blessed again because there was no other ways they were getting a job. There's no restaurants, there's no stores, there's, like I said, not even water. They don't have washrooms even. So giving them these skills, which they were super excited about, really gave them something that they can barter with. They have to go and truck water in on their backs as well. Next slide. These are just a few pictures of all of us. You can see the most unflattering pictures in the world because the showers were very cold. And there was not really a lot of resources for us, but we did have an awful lot of fun while we were there. In one of the pictures, you can see we did some community cuts as well. So when we were done teaching for the day, we went out into the community and we cut anyone's hair who would otherwise not be able to get one. Next slide. Like I was saying, the women have to walk for half an hour to get to us. They have no water, very limited resources, but they were so intent on learning And I was amazed. I take 45 days to teach our students what I was able to teach these ones in 5 in a very basic cutback way. We had to use babies and everything as models because we don't have mannequins. Next slide. The village has 400 families. They have to walk for miles and miles to get food and water. Very large hills. The little kids were just a blessing. We had them with us. You can see in the colorful table there that is their actual classroom. The picture on the right, or on the left, sorry, is a newer home, and the picture on the left is what most of the homes look like. So the small little shed would be their washroom, the next shed would be their kitchen, and then a third shed would be where they sleep. Next slide. 5 days, 5 locations. We did 49, which we actually just found out was actually 56 graduates that we had, that they all now have the skills. None of them have anything, but they do all have cell phones because it's very reasonable over there. So they've been able to keep in touch with me. They send me Instagram pictures of their haircuts that they're doing. This organization goes to 5 locations, Cambodia, Philippines. It's a wonderful organization out of Australia. So they travel around with hairstylists. It originally started with sewing, and they said what we really need is for people to teach us how to cut hair. So some of them are denied education because of haircuts. They don't have them. This is their 6th one this year that they've done. So we were blessed to be a part of that team. It did work right in with the SDG goals. And like I said, what an incredible experience for our students, for their students. The confidence that it built in our students when they came back, it was incredible. Thank you very much for having me.
Rena, what a lovely story. The pictures are amazing, and I can't even imagine all of, like, from the picture I see here on the screen, all of how full your hearts were going through this whole experience. The students are, I'm sure, forever transformed from this experience.
Yes, they sure
Thank you
are.
very much for sharing, and I'm hopeful that if anybody is inspired by this, that they'll have the opportunity to reach out to you, Rena, and learn a little bit more about maybe your experience and lessons learned.
And hopefully, like, there's dentists going over, there's some eye doctors going over. I mean, I think we can really continue to grow this into other programs as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rena. All right, up next is Kim Reed. Kim comes to us from the Center for Teaching and Learning. However, she has this beautiful project that she was working on called Changing Course. And she's here to share with us a little bit more about it. Welcome, Kim.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Very excited to be here. And it's been lovely to hear about all the other projects and change-making initiatives. I know I'm short for time, so I'm going to jump right in and talk to you a little bit about Changing Course. So Changing Course is basically a project that we hope will reimagine futures and empower youth through accessible education. So I have a few goals today. I'm not going to go over them all now because, again, I know I'm tight for time, but want to get started with what Changing Course is. So Changing Course is an initiative dedicated to transforming the lives of youth and young adults aged 16 to 26 involved with the justice system. Basically, the program offers cost-free post-secondary education as well as additional supports, a cohort model, and access to all the resources available at Georgian and possibly beyond as well to youth who have been engaged with the justice system. So my hope is that it's sort of like planting a seed. So instead of providing folks with one meal, it's giving them a seed and then supporting them through helping it to thrive and grow. The project was inspired by a few of us watching a documentary called College Behind Bars. This was during COVID, so there were a lot of documentary watching happening. And this documentary was extremely inspiring. So it started with a simple idea that was, why aren't we providing education to folks who are either incarcerated or have been incarcerated as a means of reducing recidivism rates? And then it immediately transformed into we could do this at Georgian. There are also people in our communities who have never really caught a break who deserve this opportunity. So I invite everyone to consider a time in your life when you caught a break, or as some of my family members would say, caught a good bounce. For me, that was getting a foot in the door at Georgian after graduating Teachers College in a very oversaturated teaching market. Being given the opportunity to teach one course at Georgian completely changed the trajectory of my life. And that was because someone helped me to catch a good bounce by giving me a shot at one course. So we think that changing course could help youth in our community who have been engaged with the justice system just to catch a break. The current status of the project is we have completed a number of different phases with the help and support of many folks around the college. We did Ride Team Georgian, which was a motorcycle ride that went to all 7 campuses and was a fundraising initiative to raise money for the Shift Disturbers program. So that's the program that is about to launch. It's in collaboration with the Georgian Motorcycle Program and also Barry Harley Davidson, who have been so kind and have donated a motorcycle for the students to work on. So it will inform and shape the Changing Course program as there will be surveys reporting back to Bright Futures. It's a 10-week course aligning the principles of restorative justice with the reconstruction of a motorcycle. So everything is aligned kind of like a curriculum. The one main point that I want to stress is that participants receive an honorarium for their time. So they're given living wage per hour for all the hours that they are participating in the program. And I believe interviews are happening today for participants who are interested, and there are 7 interviews happening today. So that's really exciting. So with regards to what already exists for education opportunities for those who have been engaged with the justice system, there is one incredible program that's offered out of the Kitchener-Waterloo area called Walls to Bridges. It essentially takes students from post-secondary institutions and integrates them into classroom settings that actually happen in the correctional institutions. So they have students, they call them people who are incarcerated, which are inside students, and people who are university and college-based students, which are the outside students, and they learn together as peers. It's had some incredible results. We attempted first to do a similar program, but it just wasn't possible post-COVID. And we've decided that we think it would be more successful with helping students who are reintegrating into society after having engagement with the justice system. So you may be asking, what's the government doing about education for folks who are incarcerated? A little bit. I think there's lots of good intentions here, but also a tremendous amount of limitations. So there are basically 4 different types of programs available for folks who are incarcerated. So there's life skills programs that are offered to those who are outside of formal incarceration. So they're engaged in probationary and reintegration programs. There's rehab programs available to those who are incarcerated that address factors that contribute to reoffending. So things like anger management, substance abuse, etc. There's treatment programs that are offered only at select institutions, and offenders must apply and be eligible for these programs. And then there are some educational programs available, but quite honestly, they are very limited in scope and availability and often have costs associated with them that make them inaccessible to many folks. So to summarize, I think what's missing currently is equitable access to education. So there's a lack of physical space, a lack of opportunity, funding, and more. Socioculturally relevant and accommodated education. So the options lack meaningful consideration for EDIB. And then choice and offerings. There's limited courses available via paper correspondence, which is the primary method of obtaining education while incarcerated, and no pathways to education post-release. So essentially what's missing is access. So who could benefit? We have teamed up with the Elizabeth Fry Society of Simcoe Muskoka, and we are targeting youth from 16 to 26. And we hope this will be a good jumping off point, and we can expand the entry criteria to more folks in our community in the future. The John Howard Society of Canada suggests that one of the clearest findings about imprisoned people in Canada is that the vast majority have serious deficits in their education that make it harder for them to find work and support themselves, thus staying out of difficulty with the law. So again, there's so much data out there to support the fact that education could be the key to reducing recidivism and helping folks to break the cycle of criminalization. I just want to share a little bit of data because I think it's really important. So this is just one tiny snippet. And this also doesn't include the long-term impact of folks transitioning out of the justice system and into self-sufficiency. So basically what this data is suggesting is that it costs roughly $114,783 to incarcerate someone for a year, which in comparison to the cost of providing them free tuition for a year into a program like a liberal arts program, is $3,992. So again, I think the data speaks for itself. The first cost obviously includes room and board, and it's covered in collaboration by both the federal and provincial government. However, if we were to instead provide folks with free tuition for a year, the cost would be an estimated $4,000, and it would not be necessary to cover room and board, and would provide participants with the training and confidence necessary to seek employment and lean on different services. So hopefully mental health supports and other more beneficial long-term services. So the big picture, why is this change making? So change making, as we understand it, is desiring a positive change in the world and furthering knowledge finding knowledge and resources to make it happen. Our hope is that changing course can create space and opportunities for those who may not have had access to post-secondary otherwise. Education not only opens doors for employment, but it helps to build confidence, soft skills, and shows the youth of our community that they are powerful, brave, and they can overcome. And this all started with a simple idea. So the big picture is that sometimes change happens with just a spark. So it could be something as simple as reading something, hearing something, watching something, and thinking, I think we could do that. At Georgian, we're surrounded by change makers. We have an incredible community of people who are doing wonderful things. We've seen a number of them already this morning. So sometimes we just need to reach out to find them. And Georgian can be a site for great change. We have resources, knowledge, data, and a community of like-minded people who want to see real, meaningful change in the world around us. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out now or later. I'm just one representative of a huge team of people who are working on this project, but I'd be happy to field questions and to pass them on to the folks who can answer them. I have a lot of acknowledgements. I know I'm probably running out of time. I can't see the chat, so I won't go over all of them, but there are so many people who are responsible for how far this project's come. And thank you very much for your time today.
Wonderful, Kim. Thank you very much. I love how you finished up, which is that we are a change-making college, and really that the opportunity to be change makers is about sparking interest or ideas. And I think that's exactly what you've demonstrated as well. So thank you very much for sharing today. All right. Next up, Erla Simpson and Molly Becker, and you will share the power of simulation-based learning related to I knew I was going to get that wrong, obstetrical nursing experiences. Welcome, Erla and Molly.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Erla, and Molly's right beside me. We are registered nurses, but we are also faculty in the practical nursing program here at Georgian. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Okay, so we just want to share a little bit of the background for us. So we are in charge of the obstetrical and pediatric simulation lab for the practical nursing program. So kind of the background of that lab when we kind of came into it a few years ago, it tended to be a fairly technical skills based lab where the students, kind of focus on the technical assessing and, the kind of physical hands-on portions of what to do with their patients. When we looked, it was called a simulation lab. So we kind of looked at simulation lab. It is, more of an experiential learning process that the students will be involved in. So we wanted to kind of make some changes in that. The research on simulation is there, it's proven. One study did show that 93% of students and 100% of educators agreed that confidence levels in the students were enhanced when they were students able to repeatedly practice skills in a more immersive simulation kind of environment. So we kind of took that and what we were given and said, what can we do with this? And go to the next slide.
Okay. So why change? So as Molly had said, we wanted to offer a simulation experience to our students. So that meant developing scenarios that would be more meaningful to them, more meaningful to their learning itself. When we looked at what were our overarching objectives, we wanted them to be able to critically think and problem solve. We wanted them in our world to think like a nurse. We wanted them to have essential communication skills, working as effective team members, demonstrating empathy and respect for one another, but also for their patients, and opportunities to step up and act in leadership roles. So really, we wanted to develop nurses who would go back, who would be reflective, responsive, and reflexive in their thinking. We really wanted them to place patients at the center of their care, really using those humanistic values that we value, that we really do value as nurses in our field as well. But then we had this this light bulb moment. Both Molly and I were like, hey, we're really aligning with the vision of change making. And so we really brought that aspect into the simulation lab as well. Now you can go ahead.
Okay, so kind of changing from that technical based skills lab to a simulation lab. So we still support the students in their theoretical knowledge and kind of that hands-on, you know, what am I supposed to be feeling with my patients. So we support them in those skills. And then we created a 4-scenario simulation day where the students actually walk through this evolving scenario, which allows them to connect with the patient, because we have a mom who delivers a baby and, you know, is postpartum and even walks up to some of the pediatric years, so that the students can actually connect with this patient as they're going through different situations. So one of the situations that the students go through, we use a standardized patient that acts out the scenario with them. And this mom is receiving some kind of concerning news about her newborn baby. So having that standardized patient actor in there makes the situation more authentic. It's more accurate. You know, she cries because she is feeling the weight of the news that she is receiving, and the students need to deliver that news, and they need to empathize, and they need to communicate, and they need to decide, you know, how am I responding to this patient? What kind of nonverbal communication are we, you know, communicating back and forth with here? But really the real magic happens after the simulation is completed and we do a debrief. So today, these are the magical learning moments. So we use a debrief tool so that it keeps us on track and making sure we go through all of the different components of the debrief that we want to hit upon. So we use one called the 3D model. So it's just 3 different Ds. So the first part is diffusing, and this is where students can check their emotions. Some of the situations might be triggering. We want to create an environment that is psychologically safe for the students to learn and to share. So we're looking at our reactions. How did I feel during that? Have I been in similar situations before? And this is kind of triggering some of that. So we go through this kind of diffusing phase. And then we discover, so why did we do what we did in that situation? And kind of walking through, getting everyone on the same page, that they understand what happened. We can explore what they were thinking at the time. You know, is there anything they would want to do differently if they were in a similar situation? And then the next phase of that is the deepening phase. And this is really where we look at the transferability skills, of all of the skills into the rest of the world, into their future practice, into their clinical placement the next week. So we look at, you know, how they're going to advocate for their patients. What kind of system changes did this make them think of? You know, are there creative and innovative approaches that they would look at the healthcare system or their unit in general? So this is where we kind of get to brainstorm all together and think about the larger picture as well. Next page, slide.
So, of course, as we're going through this, we're thinking, okay, this is a great quality improvement, but are we really targeting what we wanted to target? Are we really reaching the objectives that we set out for our simulation lab? So Molly and I surveyed the students using the SET-M, which is the simulation effectiveness tool. And the SET-M is a reliable and a valid tool that's used out there for simulation. And we hit the marks. These were the questions asked on the SET-M, and the students, 100%, 98.7 to 100% of students felt they could respond to their patient's condition. They could make clinical decisions. They could communicate better with their patients, with their healthcare team members, right? So many things that would foster patient safety, which is key in our world, right? Making care not only safe, but really stepping up and including patients in the care. So the results were overwhelming. Next slide. Also, there was a qualitative piece on the survey. And when we pulled these things out, these words that the students gave to us, outstanding, invaluable, transformative, shaping me into being a better nurse, most incredible learning, empowering, totally real life experience, very eye-opening and super important. we not only realized, man, did we ever nail this in our simulation lab? So much of what we wanted to see to build great nurses, but we also knew that we were putting them on the pathway to being change makers as well. So we really took this as a big win for our nursing students.
I hope to expand it further into other
situations. And so we just encourage you, if you haven't tried simulation, reach out to us. We can help you. We can put you in touch with people that can help you with simulation-based strategies. And some of them can be as simple as role playing, but doing it in a safe way as well, an evidence-informed way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Erla and Molly, thank you so very much. What a great opportunity. What a great learning experience. And if anybody has not had the chance to check out any of the nursing simulations that are over in M Building, I got to tell you, you got to check it out. It is really incredible. Thank you very much for sharing. What a great opportunity to share around change making. All right, so next up, Brian. Nice to see and hear from you, Brian Mandeville. It's been a bit. Brian's going to talk about the Map the Systems Canada. So please, Brian, take it away.
Thanks, Kelly. So Map the Systems Canada is a research competition that happens every year out in Calgary. And really what it is just an opportunity for students to come and compete by showing off their research in systems thinking. Systems thinking is one of the sort of habits or streams of change makers. And what's really great about this system or a way of thinking in terms of systems thinking is that synergy and that holistic approach. It provides a really great alternative to a traditional essay, which is really how we got involved with it over in liberal studies, where we have a capstone course in the old general arts and science program where students had to write this 20-page paper. And they'd spend the whole semester doing deep research on it and writing it. And after a lot of feedback, we realized they hated it. And then I thought about it and realized I hated reading them. Nobody wants to plow through a big pile of essays at the end of the semester right before Christmas or before summer break. So what are we doing? They're all going to use ChatGPT or something like that to write it anyway. So is this even a viable skill that I'm helping my students learn? Is there another tool or something else that they could do instead? And so it turns out that through systems thinking, they use a lot of different types of system maps. And those are all just tools to express all of the same ideas that they would get across in an essay, just in a much more holistic and visually friendly form. So I thought today that instead of just showing you some of the quotations from my students or data that we have on how much they liked it or the great work they produced, I would just run you through the iceberg model, which is the easiest one to do and is really applicable to any sort of social phenomenon, whether you're looking at, like why is it so hard to get access to cutting hair in Guatemala, or why is it simulation such a great learning tool? It will work for almost anything. And so when we look at the iceberg, the very top of the iceberg, if you want to go to the next slide, and if you want to just click through these as I talk, I'm sure it'll be just fine because they don't really change too much. So at the top, we've got our events. So in this model, events are just things that we see when we're looking at a social phenomenon. They're observable, so that's why they're above the surface. You can see them happening. And if we want to make a change to an event, then we just react. And through that reaction, we can make often an immediate change, but it's a shallow change. It's not going to be long lasting. If we look at this over time, though, and these events that we notice, we'll often see patterns in these events. And as a result of seeing these patterns, we can then start to make a deeper level of a change by anticipating them. And through anticipation, now we can maybe work towards preventing these patterns from happening in the future. But instead of just preventing them in the future, we're going to have to even go deeper to try to understand where did these patterns come from in the first place. And so our patterns are always built on these systems and structures, which are the causes of patterns that created the phenomenon. So the systems and structures are very hard to see and often require a lot more of a deep dive to really understand. But if we can understand the systems that are creating the patterns, then we can design a new system or alter a system or structure to create something new. Ultimately, once we have a firm understanding of those, we can go even further down to where we can find transformational change. And this occurs through the realization that a lot of these systems and structures that are in place in our society are based on mental models. These are thoughts or beliefs, values, and they're upholding all of these systems that have been put in place socially, politically, or economically. So I mentioned that this is all based on sort of this Map the Systems Canada competition. And it's a big expense to take everybody out to Calgary where it happens and to help the students get there and provide that. And I don't know if you guys heard this, but the college might be a little tight for cash right now. And I'm told that is because there's international student reduction. So I thought, well, if we're going to actually apply this knowledge, maybe we should look at something that maybe is impacting all of us. So from a systems thinking, systems map, iceberg perspective, we can see that there are events happening that are observable with our international student reductions. We can see that policies have been put in place this year that are going to limit the number of international students that are allowed to come to Canada to study. We can also see that officials are citing things like housing and strains on employment. And there's a lot more debate in the public about whether or not this is good or bad. But if we look at these events as sort of consider them as behaviors over time, we can start to see a pattern that's emerged over the last several years, the last decade or more. A lot of us in education have seen this happening for quite some time now. And we've noticed that the amount of international students studying in Ontario and Canada has drastically increased over time. Over the last decade or so, the system has become rather reliant on it. And there's rising costs of houses in urban centers. Many of the institutions where students study are in urban centers, and so this is really exasperating that. There's a lot of increasing public criticism as well that international students are seen as competing with local residents for these limitations in housing and low-wage jobs, and they're putting additional pressure on local infrastructure. And so one of the ways that we're at the patterns level here. So if we can anticipate those to make change, we can see that happening in real world examples. So like at Georgian College, we're looking at things like, can we give students bus passes? That should alleviate some of the transportation issues around the college. Can we come up with creative housing solutions like pairing them with senior citizens who have extra rooms? And that will work to alleviate some of the problem, but it's not actually going to provide a very long, deep, lasting solution, which is where we need to look at redesigning a system or structure that is in place. And so if we go back to that housing example, well, there's been chronic undersupply of affordable homes being built in Canada for more than 30 years now. And so, yes, international students are a small contribution to that problem, but it's a larger systematic issue that's been ongoing for decades. Labor market pressures that are exacerbated by additional people looking for employment, people are perceiving this that are they really in competition with a lot of Canadians for these employment positions? A lot of our international students are often find themselves in precarious work, in low wage work, or low-leveled skilled work. And we can also see that our system, when we look at education on the whole now, has an over-reliance on international students. So the system itself economically, could it function without international students? We can look at the huge change that's been announced at our institution just over the last few weeks, and that's only the result of a 15% reduction so far this year in our international students. And so really the underlying design here is that it's a policy trade-off. We've seen immigration policies that encouraged international students as part of a broader economic strategy. And that was the case for several years, but they never adequately addressed all of these downstream impacts of housing and employment.
And just last 30 seconds, Brian.
Okay, thanks. I'll rush through the last mental models then, because this is where we see very real transformations, but it's really hard to change these because this is where people's core beliefs come from. And so it's things like strain versus contributors. Do you look at international students and see them as a contributor to your community and economy, or are they a strain there? Is there a rise in nationalism where people are prioritizing the needs of Canadians above the needs of internationals? And also things like, actual evidence versus political beliefs that we see associated with identity politics pushed by the media. And really a big question of assumption on values about who deserves access to housing and education. Should it be a Canadian first policy? And so if we can make meaningful change at this level, then it'll just spiral up to everything else. So that's my very, very quick lesson on icebergs and systems thinking. There's a couple of resources there you can check out, or if you ever want to just have a chat about this, or have a look at some other maps that might be more applicable to the subject matter you're teaching in. I spend most of my time hanging out in the basement here by myself, working from home. So I'm always happy to chat with another adult. And thanks a lot, everybody.
Brian, thank you so very much. Always a pleasure to see and hear from you. So thank you very much for sharing and sharing your resources. Up next is Joanne Renaud, and Joanne is going to talk about Change the Now. Welcome, Joanne.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Just want to excuse myself. I got a bit of a cold, so excuse my muffled voice and my cough in case I do that during the presentation. My name is Joanne Renaud. I'm a lead in learning and development at Change the Now. We are a small but mighty team. Next slide, please. That works with the Social Innovation Department at Georgian College. Next slide, please. So what is Change Now? We are a movement to grow a region of change makers. We consider ourselves a school within a school to really bring the experiential learning of change making practice to students, educators, and community partners. So we're really looking to even foster that change making experience into the community with industry and community and all related to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide, please. So we're really here to support you as educators, as people in the industry of education, but also just as people. So how can you leverage what CTN has to offer you? So we have these few buckets that we work through. So one is the experiential learning space, where we come in and can work in your classroom settings, bringing in workshops that speak to empathy, teamwork, and also bringing some of the social innovation toolkits like Brian just kind of shared to your courses or to your environment. We also work with students, our post-secondary students, to get them to mentor younger students, such as high school students in the first robotics program that we have at Georgian, and also the Enactus Club, which is an international space for entrepreneurial learning and doing. Our next little bucket is work integrated learning, where we are able to offer for credit, field placement and co-op to students looking to do their credits. And we collaborate in this regards with industry and community partners. So we bring in experiential projects that are living situations or issues in the community that teams of students can help problem solve with dynamic and diverse voices. To support the educators in our ecosystem, we have a Train the Trainer, which is an educational stream to help you understand what your change-making pathway might look like and what kind of changes you want to bring into the space. We've had an amazing array of experiences and showcases here today. So just adding to that wealth of doing and learning. We're also working towards a global experience, so understanding how we can actually work with high school and post-secondary students through an international collaboration. And I'll share a little more about that later on in my presentation. And last but not least, we are trying to create that regional partnership development. So really partnering with schools, organizations, and even municipalities to align regional calls to action. So where can we make a difference and what is the difference that we really want to make, but in a collaborative voice? Next slide, please. So with the experiential learning, we're really bringing play into the classroom. In our first presentation, I think with Samantha, they were speaking about bringing that aspect of doing and learning as opposed to sitting and being very still. So we really want to build creative confidence within the space. Pull on curiosity. So we have really cool tools like the empathy toy tool, if anyone's done that before. And we've developed our own tools and creative projects through the scenarios. We really dwell into empathy and teamwork that can be applied into any course or program that you are working with, not only with students, but even maybe with departments or team members. And we really kind of encourage people to share their skills in the activities that they enjoy doing. So we kind of try and work with that. Next slide, please. Our integrated work learning environment also has the ability to go virtual. So we have a platform that is accessible from anywhere that has a listing of journeys, of social innovation journeys and changemaker pathway journeys that students, educators, or anyone from the community can go through to learn and to facilitate and to do within their spaces. This can work towards an applied project. So for example, if you are a faculty member working on bringing a capstone or an applied project into your program, we can help set you up in the platform with these social innovation tools that students can go through and work within their team setting. We call this journey the find, frame, and shift. So moving from an inquiry space of finding, exploring, using toolkits such as empathy. We always start with empathy as our way forward because we don't design for, we design with people, with planet, so that there's always that lens put at the very beginning of these journeys with that. And then
about 2
students
minutes
go
left. Sorry, Joanne,
Thanks.
about 2 minutes left.
Thank you. And then we go into framing. So ideating and prototyping, and then shifting the narrative. So how would the students work to test and shift the narrative of their work? Next slide, please. Our Train the Trainer works in the same manner, but we get you to work on a theory of change, so a pathway to navigate the change you want to see. So this was a recent Train the Trainer we had in October. So we do offer this once a semester, but we can also customize for larger groups of departments. Next slide, please. Our global program really is about faculty and staff and making more connections with institutions out of Canada. So just look out for more news from us about that as we're building that airplane as we're flying it. Next slide, please. And these are just some of the community partners that we've been working with, like Redwood Parks, Simcoe Muskoka Health District Unit, Uplift Black, and so on. So really kind of working with partners in the community to bring projects and environments where students and educators can benefit from those conversations and that doing. Next slide, please.
Just 30 seconds left.
Sure. And through all of that, students can get their Changemaker badges if they apply empathy, teamwork, leadership, and changemaking in action through their work with us or even within your course. So I'm happy to always discuss how they can achieve these. Next slide, please. This is just going back to Charmaine's question at the very beginning, our values to why we're being change makers. At CTN, we just believe that small acts can lead to big change and collaborations turn into large-scale movements. So I'll leave you with that. And sorry, if you can just change the slide to the last slide or the second last slide. Oh, the one before, yeah. You're welcome to get in touch with us if you want to ask more questions and to learn more. Thank you.
Joanne, thank you very much. That was very insightful. And there's so much happening with the Change the Now team, with the group. So thank you very much for sharing. And folks, I'm encouraging you to, inviting you to check out Change the Now. All right, so we're going to switch over to Sarah Hunter and Tracy Mitchell-Ashley, and they're going to speak about manifesting as a changemaker model and resource guide. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Tracy, did you want me to start us off?
Yes, please.
Awesome. All right. So it's been so fabulous. I'm taking copious amounts of notes as everyone shares. There's so many things to bring forward into the work we're doing that I'm in learning mode, and now I need to switch into sharing mode. So we had the opportunity, we have just wrapped up our research project where we worked with the fine folks at Ashoka and people across the college sector, elementary, and local industry to work on mapping the competencies of a change maker and how we can support this work in practice. So we're going to take you through a little bit of our project, how we ideated it, and then we really want to land on spending some time introducing you to the resources that we developed to support people doing this work in the classroom.
Next slide.
Yes.
And a couple returns.
Thank you. Okay, to begin, the Changemaker, actually right where we just ended, the Changemaker competencies of empathy, shared leadership, teamwork, and changemaking in practice. As the college was ideating the badges and micro-credentials for those about 4 years ago, a few of us at the table, classically trained educators, people teaching in post-secondary, were really curious about how we can certify our students with these skills and mindsets when they're really difficult to evaluate in the classroom. So we reached out with this question to CCSIF, which is the College Community Social Innovation Fund, through Research and Innovation. And we secured a $360,000 grant to spend 3 years working with folks collaboratively to both map out these skill sets and develop measures and tools so that we could see when students were evolving in these skills and areas and where we could refine and change our instructional approaches to better support students when they weren't developing these skills. A big part of this project was working with K-12 and industry. Yeah, you can go ahead. Excellent. So we won't spend too much time here. This was funded through NSERC, which is the Natural Science and Engineering Research Council. They fund college research. But we did work with Ashoka, Charmaine and the folks at Ashoka to really take where their work kind of ended with the definition of the competencies to then create that co-constructed model where we could see how elementary, secondary, and post-secondary students evolved along a continuum of developing these skills. Now,
Next
a few
slide.
interesting things maybe that we'll share before I pass it over to Tracy is one of the big pieces of this for us as researchers was first navigating one of the first change-making research projects in both our college and research ethics, but also through receiving a grant through the CCSIF. Changemaker research is really hard to kind of nail down. It's fluid, it's emerging, it's evolving, as you'll hear here. The other big piece is that we engaged our research analyst team, and we took students from the research analyst program and we engaged them as researchers and really kind of passed the torch to them to do a lot of this work so that it could be done by students, with students, and for students. And over to you, Tracy.
Thanks so much. In terms of our sort of processes, we did form a change-making research circle. We did rely on focus groups for information, worked with our students. We received tons of feedback, and we had some amazing artistic moments as a team as we were working towards developing our model and our tools. And we can go to the next slide.
We were thrilled to unveil this model in the spring, which is our model for manifesting as a change maker. Again, based on the amazing crowdsourced wisdom of many folk who started to lean into trying to, define what change making looked like. And what we landed on was based on several different models, the background of which we'll share in a tool that is open access. We're happy to share with you after. And if you go to new slide, there were some things that we were particularly happy about this model. So what we really tried to lean into is that when we are practicing empathy, teamwork, or leadership, in order to actually be practicing change makers, that we're not always 100% of the time showing up with empathy, with super strong teamwork skills or super strong leadership skills. And in fact, we will rotate through those things, cycle through in different scenarios, which is why in many ways a team becomes so important, because somebody can be really showing up strongly with an empathy model while you're maybe floundering, like, something else is complicating you, maybe trauma, like Mel talked about earlier, that impedes your own progress and process. So we wanted to have a model that reflected that students and ourselves and everyone can rotate in and out of doing, thinking, and feeling in any of these skills and mindsets we associate with change making. And we wanted to notice that all of these skills are interconnected. In order to manifest as a change maker, it is actually an interaction of these three things, and that bring that ability to practice to life. We can go to the next slide. So having landed on this model, the team worked together with an amazing writer, Sarah Driesens, who then took all of the stuff that we collected and created and curated and put this into to a lovely open access press book called Manifesting as a Change Maker, which is full of tools to support folk on any part of their journey into change making. And so that is the gift we wanted to share today, was this resource. And we will invite you and share this resource in the chat. I can drop it in a second, but as well, it's linked on the flow that we've been repeatedly sharing that folks will have, oh, thanks, Samantha, will have access to. And with that, I'll go to last slide and turn it back to Sarah.
So thank you, Tracy. So the book that we created really was the big shift in our study. The classic approach is to take the findings of a Tri-Council grant and publish them in academic papers. And although we have gone that route and we do have a few publications pending, what we focused most of our effort on was developing a co-constructed tool that K-12 and post-secondary educators could use to reinforce and introduce these concepts in the classroom. So when you go through the press book, it's divided up by each of the competencies. There are starter activities, there are in-depth activities. We really did create something that we hoped you could reach into, take from, and bring into the classroom to support you on your journey. We would also like this to stay kind of a living learning resource. So we do provide you here a email address. We've received some contributions from folks from across really North America, things they're doing in their classroom that we will add into that press book. So if there's anything you're using, everything that has been shared here today would be a fabulous contribution. We hope that we can curate and keep a lot of this in the same spot, because one of the challenges is that all of this fabulous stuff lives in a lot of people's heads and hearts. And there is no kind of one-stop shop to find what you need to bring into your classroom.
Thank you so much. And please reach out if you have any questions.
Tracy and Sarah, thank you so very much. What tremendous work you are doing. And what a great opportunity to see this resource as a living, to have this resource as a living document. And then all of the stories that were shared today. What a great opportunity to sort of see how things are working together and where folks are going with some of these wonderful ideas. So thank you again. I'm not sure that the 6 minutes did you justice, so perhaps maybe there will be a later date where you can share more of the research that you have been doing. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Laura Koza. Hello, my friend Laura. Nice to see you. And
hello.
You were,
can you guys
hello. Yeah, we can hear you, Laura. So Laura's going to talk about how we might find joy in taking care of ourselves. And I believe this is actually possibly a little bit of an assignment that I might be hearing a little bit about later too. So take it away, Laura.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. If you could actually, oh, my camera just popped me off. Um, Thank you guys. Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. And before I get started, I just wanted to honor what a beautiful space this is and how much I've learned from everybody who has spoke and truly how grateful I am to be here with all of you wonderful people sharing this amazing information. So I have genuinely learned so much and I'm so grateful to all of you. So thank you. And thank you hugely to the team who's putting on this day, the Focus on Changemaking Day team. So you guys are wonderful and this is such a pleasure. We can hop to the next slide, but I just wanted to introduce, so I had the beautiful opportunity this summer to work with, I'm not sure why that keeps happening, with IVAL, which is the International Virtual Exchange Team. So actually the wonderful Kelly Fox and Janet O'Neill created a training for a pilot group of faculty to say, how do we bring international experiences into the classroom in whatever capacity that might look like. So, so often when we think about international experiences, it involves going to a place and doing something amazing, like we heard with the hair cutting, which is fabulous. And that sort of allows, or that comes with its own challenges, which are financial and emotional. So how can we sort of bring these international competencies, bring these international experiences into our classroom? So this sort of set me down the path, and I got to learn so much about this, about how do we think about sort of big problems on other sides of the world, and then use sort of our students and our mindsets and what we're learning in the classroom to sort of create this collaborative approach to solution making. So I had the privilege to work with my recreation and leisure students in an inclusive and adaptive recreation class, and really ask my students to say, how can we work with the Sustainable Development Goal number 3? And we're actually partnering with a wonderful person in El Salvador, and really asking my students, how can we find joy to empower the people in El Salvador to take care of themselves? So our partner was doing research on the obesity epidemic in El Salvador, and I am asking my students, how do we take that recreation approach, which is how do we cultivate joy? How do we find amusement? To look at creating solutions that might empower people to be joyous in taking care of themselves. So my students are writing a social prescription. They're coming up with assignments. They're doing a research paper, and I'm so excited. They're actually presenting them this afternoon. So I'm racing out of here to go watch my amazing students do their amazing work this afternoon. So this sort of sparked me down this path around, which we can go to the next slide. This change-making ideology, which is how can, so often I think we look at making change, whether it's about health, whether it's about climate change, whether it's about these huge big problems about fear. We look at climate change, oh, if we don't change our habits, our world's going to be over for our children, or if we don't sort of take care of ourselves, we're going to have these massive health repercussions. And what I continually seem to find as I'm sort of stepping down this path, that the more we make these changes out of fear, we're actually reducing the sustainability of the changes that we're making. So how do we look at some of these big problems and these massive sort of opportunities with genuine joy? How do we say, how can we create a solution that is about finding joy in taking care of our earth? How can we find joy about taking care of ourselves? How can we find joy in the process of change? And through this sort of research that I have been doing, a couple of sort of common themes continue to spark. And to me, I think this aligns so beautifully to our teaching practices, from as simple as, how do I find joy in recreating my course? Or how do I find joy in redoing an assignment? Or how do I find joy in sort of showing up for my students? And I was sort of able to identify 5 common elements through sort of my own research in this. And the first one, as Brene Brown sort of states, one of the most common elements of people who live in joy is gratitude. So how can we be grateful for what we have and what we get to do, from as simple as using languages, hey, I get to teach today, versus I have to go into the college and do that. So gratitude became one. Another one is choice. I think everybody knows that when we are forced to do something, we don't feel as connected to it. So how do we sort of embody that idea of choice, not only in our own practices, but for our students? And this one I think is so clear in today's session and what sort of the CTL team is doing for us today, but it's fostering that community of people. So how do we come together with like-minded individuals to empower and inspire each other in doing amazing work? The last one actually sort of continued to is something I have had a little mind blow moment in recently, but it's giving compliments. There's a lot of research recently about if we just stop and sort of give someone a compliment from as simple as, hey, your outfit is amazing, to hey, I really liked what you said and it really inspired and empowered me. But the more we can sort of give out compliments and the more we can feel that good energy from other people, it actually inspires our own joy and connects with our own sort of sense of validation and accomplishment. So that is one that has been really powerful for me. And the last one is get outside. There's chemical responses in our brain that happen when we spend time with higher densely populated of oxygen. So when we're outside where there's more trees and we're sort of connecting with that fresh air, we know that it does good stuff for our brain to bring out that sort of joyous aspect in us. So this beautiful assignment that connected me with our international virtual exchange has really inspired a much deeper question in me, which is how might we find joy in the process of creating change, and how can we bring that to life, not only in our teaching practices and our assignments, but I think also as human beings in how we show up to this world. So I tried to speed through that very quickly because I think we're running a little bit behind, but so I'm probably, I don't know where I'm at for time, but I do just want to sort of leave it there and say genuine, wholehearted thank you guys so much for putting on this day, listening to me, and creating this space for all of us to connect and find joy in each other with. So I love you all, love to you all, and I now have to run to get to campus to be able to hear my beautiful students. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. What a great way to finish up all of our presentations. That was, I'm sure it wasn't necessarily planned, but how perfect was that? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing. Thank you to everybody for the time and effort that you put. I know putting a presentation together, albeit 6 minutes or 600 minutes, is always an effort. So I appreciate everybody and I appreciate everybody's time. Wonderful stories, and what a great opportunity to share from our colleagues specifically what is really happening within our institution, and something that is close to us. You know, it's something that we all can reach out to each other and have a conversation about. So that's awesome. Thank you.